I think looking back, I can see some of the pieces of the puzzle that sort of came together to form this. But when I was young, I mean, my family, I come from a military family, and so we really there was a high value placed on activity, on athleticism, and just being very active, which, when you're raised kind of in that, it exercise becomes a fun thing to do. And but I never looked at that, at fitness or exercise, or being at the gym as a career. um, my formal training in college was in communications, in television, radio, some film, and that degree was within the journalism college. So I was studying a lot of the communications that I use today in different ways. 25 plus years ago. It was more like 30 years ago. And it wasn't until after I was married and had two young kids and we had separated from the military that I even entertained the thought of being an instructor or a coach in any way, shape, or form.
All right. Thanks for joining us, Ericka, at the Life of a Career podcast. Before we get started, could you give us a quick 90 seconds of who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. Thank you, Eric, for having me on. I am a resilience coach and an entrepreneur, and my company is called Savage Grace Coaching. What we do is help stressed out professionals and the fit pros who serve them shake off stress, tension, and anxiety so that they can really burnout proof their life. And the way we do that is through trauma-informed instruction in almost every format, including, but rooted in really yoga and trauma release. And my career started, I think, over 25 years ago in the fitness industry. And it really has been an evolution from something that was teaching one class a week in martial arts to what I have now, which is a online studio that basically meets pretty much any flexible need for my life.
Wow. I'm excited to hear about what that day-to-day looks like and what type of advice that you provide or what type of coaching you provide, because I think preventing burnout is a very real thing, I think, in today's landscape of careers and I guess stress levels, just based on everything that's happening. And but before we get there, how let's start from the beginning of your life. Did you know that this was the path that you were going to take ever since you were little?
Absolutely not. I think looking back, I can see some of the pieces of the puzzle that sort of came together to form this. But when I was young, I mean, my family, I come from a military family, and so we really there was a high value placed on activity, on athleticism, and just being very active, which, when you're raised kind of in that, it exercise becomes a fun thing to do. And but I never looked at that, at fitness or exercise, or being at the gym as a career. My formal training in college was in communications, in television, radio, some film, and that degree was within the journalism college. So I was studying a lot of the communications that I use today in different ways. 25 plus years ago. It was more like 30 years ago. And it wasn't until after I was married and had two young kids and we had separated from the military that I even entertain the thought of being an instructor or a coach in any way, shape, or form.
Okay. When you were younger, then, did you uh, practice martial arts? I heard that it sort of started there. Is that
Mm.
something that started very young?
No, I didn't start that till I was 25 years old.
Oh,
So here's the thing, like, so what I would say to people is that, um, you know, sometimes we get little pieces of what we're going to become sprinkled throughout our life. And for me, my dad really wanted to introduce all of us kids to every kind of sport. So we got to learn tennis. We used to go for runs with him. We learned baseball and softball and basketball. I mean, we learned all the sports and played all the sports. And this was back in the day where you didn't have to specialize so young, the way young people seem to do today. When I was in high school, I was a 2-season athlete and spent that middle season doing drama. So I feel like from an early age, I really enjoyed doing a lot of different things, like many, many different things. And that actually made it a little bit challenging when, you get to 18, 19, 20 and people are asking you, well, what do you want to do for a career? And I really couldn't put my finger on one particular thing. I just knew that I enjoyed being in front of people. I knew I enjoyed being physically active. I really was drawn to biology and like how the body worked. And back then I didn't know how to tie all of those things together. And it wasn't until I started on a whim training in taekwondo and moving my body that I understood, like, this all makes sense now. Like, okay, so I can move, and now I have this skill, this communication skill, to be able to break these movements down to help other people move that way. And what does that do for the body? Well, not only does it make you physically fit, but it actually helps improve that mental fitness and that mental resilience. And all of these things come in tiny little bite-sized bits of information that you plug in and then evolve a career out of that. That is how my career started, through martial arts, because our martial arts school, our taekwondo school, wanted kickboxing, right? Back in the day when kickboxing first came on the scene in the fitness industry, it was like the latest, greatest fitness fad, right? And we see a lot of those that have come through. Some of them stick around, some of them sort of go away. But the whole kickboxing thing, all of the martial arts studios wanted an instructor, but my taekwondo master didn't want to be that instructor. And so he tapped me to go take my 4-hour workshop to go be a cardio kickboxing instructor. And I absolutely loved it. But what I quickly learned, Eric, is that this is being in front of people is serious business. When you stand up in front of a room full of people, there's a lot of responsibility there. And they ask you questions about how the body works that go way beyond a 4-hour workshop for certification, right?
mm-hmm.
So what I discovered there is that I needed to take some control over my own knowledge base. And that drive went right into a deeper certifications. The interesting thing about the fitness industry is there can be a very low barrier to entry, and you don't have to have a college degree in order to be a really good, very knowledgeable instructor. What you need is to cultivate some curiosity and to really dive in to a lot of different areas, not just what to teach, like bicep curls or front kick or whatever your thing is in the gym. Anybody can learn what to teach, but the real secret sauce is when you get into how to communicate those things and how to teach them in ways that other people can really receive and resonate with for better health.
Yeah, the curiosity part that you mentioned, is that something, because your high school career, you were doing two different sports as well as I think theater you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
It, is that was that like an internal thing that you've always had, just curiosity for different things that drove you to do all those things? Um, and also just curious for you said you were in a military family. Were you moving around a lot too? Did that also help you build
Mm.
your communication skill set because you had to, meet people every couple of
Mm.
years?
Yeah. So, okay. So, two really great questions. I'll take your first question first. Um, the um, the interesting thing about that curiosity piece for me is that I just like to learn new things. So, um, and that's something that I have discovered lately in life. I just would do these things naturally. Like I just want to learn something new. Like give me something new. And in the fitness industry, if you are a coach, if you are a fitness instructor of any format, learning new things to bring to your clients is a really important thing to have because that industry is always changing. The science behind those, the things that we offer to people, it does shift and change. And so it's really important for us to be aware of those changes and to be able to kind of bring that science into the everyday kind of layman's language so that people can take what they need and use it in a way that works for them because everybody is different, right? We're trying to help groups of people, yet every single one of those people, that they're all individuals and they all need different things. So it's a real balancing act, and it's very helpful if you yourself are interested in looking in learning new things to bring, like the fun fact of the day, like this is the latest thing that I just learned about how the body metabolizes alcohol, for example, or whether or not we want to do cardio before weightlifting or after weightlifting, or how to just move into a more intuitive eating pattern, those kinds of things. So that piece to the puzzle sort of flows naturally for me. And then the second part of your question about moving often, um, you may be right about that. Like until very recently, I had never lived anywhere for more than 3 years, like even from a very young age. And I know at one point in my life, I was kind of envious of my friends who had always been in that particular town since they were in kindergarten, and everybody in school knew each other and all of these things. And so I always wished that we had done that, because that's the way human nature is. You always want what you didn't have. I didn't really know any different. What I found as an adult is that every 3 years, I kind of get this little itch, like, why are we still here? Isn't it time to go? Shouldn't we be packing up and leaving? So even when there was no need to do it. And you might be right, maybe that makes it a little bit easier for families, for individuals who have made those transitions quite often. For me, I got really used to kind of starting over, for starting from scratch. And that's another piece of being a fitness professional. In some ways, it's easy to do that if you have to, if you have to up and move, you are your own company. You are a business of one, and your business goes where you go. And especially now where we have pivoted so much of the fitness industry into online fitness or hybrid models, it makes it even better for for fitness professionals that want to expand and scale their companies, because you don't have to necessarily be there in person. You can set up an online studio the way Savage Grace Coaching is set up. It's hybrid now, but originally it was online only. And I recently, the beginning of this year, just did another move after 3 years to my current location in Ohio, and I was able to keep a class from North Carolina. So I can continue to stay in communication and connection and community with that class. And they wanted to come with me through that online space. And so I feel very grateful for that, actually, that pivot. It's one of the nicer things that came out of our pandemic.
Yeah, the I can relate to I think I can relate a little bit to both sides of the moving factor. So I grew up in a static environment, and then I was in the military, and during that period of time, in 6 years, I moved 5 times,
Yes.
and that doesn't even include the deployment move, I guess.
Right.
That so that's why I was curious. I had to develop a different skill set in the military to always be in a new team and try to make friends in different areas every year, which was a change in dynamic that I wasn't used to. So very, very, that's why I was curious about your experience growing up that way.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just to point some, I mean, that is a lot of moves, right? 6 years, five moves.
Mhm.
My all three of my brothers have served and are serving in the Army, and my nephews have been in, you go to high school, you expect to be in high school for 4 years, but they've also had four high schools, so it's really challenging for young people when you're moving around that much. And yes, you're right, there's kind of there's two sides to that coin. Some people really thrive with that new environment right away, and some people, it's a struggle. So yeah, and also thank you for your service, Eric. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the support. Yeah, and thank you, your family, for. It sounds like everyone is
A
in the
lot of them.
service in some capacity. Um, yeah, the that lifestyle is definitely very challenging, and uh, interestingly, I think I have the same itch now. After being in any location for a while, I just think that I need a change, and I prefer it. So that I understand that. But so when you were younger, then did you ever have any jobs? You were playing sports and movie, doing the theater stuff. Is there? Did you have any time to work and
Mm-hmm.
explore that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I did the typical summer job thing during high school, and I worked at some local retail stores and some, it was like a grocery store, but oh my gosh, I haven't thought of this in a long time. So I was the salad bar girl. Like I put together all the salad bar stuff, and the soups that they would have. I don't even know if they even do salad bars. Probably they don't even do salad bars and grocery stores. I don't know. Anyway, it was like part of the deli, and it was interesting. Like that there were those kinds of jobs, and then in college I was able to get a job at the local radio station as a production assistant. So I was able to see some of the back office things that went behind the scenes in radio. and television also. I worked in master control on a television station as part of my, my major. And interestingly, some of those things were showing me what I did not want to do. Like, and and I think that's okay. Like, I think it's okay to spend some time as a young person just testing out what is going to work for you to work at. And it's not that I hated those jobs. I just never felt like I was thriving there. Like sometimes you step into a position and you just know it's not something that lights you up. And um and not every job has to do that, but you need to be able to find a way to connect your own deeper your own gifts to whatever it is that you're doing. And if that isn't there, then maybe there's another place out there for you to look at. There's a really fantastic book that I highly recommend to people. It's called Growing the Positive Mind. I believe the author's last name is Larkin. It's a short read, and he talks about being able to be in situations like work that maybe are not great work, but still keeping that your own special gifts online while you are doing that work. So he tells a story in that book about cleaning clamshells, and this is a psychologist. He's a white collar worker. Basically, he's not he has nothing to do with fish or clamshells, but he's helping out one of his family members in their business. And so he talks about that experience, about how he was able to apply some of his deeper spiritual gifts, creativity, how can I do this in a very efficient way, all of those things. And it's a fascinating read. It's something that really kind of changed my mindset about really doing anything, because, it would be great if we all loved everything about our job, but not everything about our job is always so wonderful, even though overall it's a great thing.
Yeah, did you discover that early to sort of be able to combine all the things that you do? Because at now as a resilience coach, I feel like it is a combination of every aspect that
Right.
you've sort of touched upon, from theater to communications to sports, and it's all just sort of combined together. Did you know that that was happening when was it intentional, or
In
did
the
it?
moment, no, but there was a point, I will tell you, Eric, and this is like a pivotal thing, and this may resonate with some of our listeners. There was a point in my professional fitness career where I was overtraining and really, really physically and mentally burnt out. I was teaching 24 hours of active classes a week. So that's 24 hours of exercise. It's like the equivalent of like 4 or 5 marathons a week. And on top of that, doing my own, quote unquote, my own exercise, because I had gotten some advice from another instructor early on about making sure that you did something for yourself too. But I thought that meant like more exercise. What?
Yeah.
So I had like no idea of how to balance that. And that was right when I came into my training for yoga, and specifically trauma informed yoga, and started to kind of tease out some of these things, right? How do we find balance so that we can show up as our best self and really share those gifts that we excel at, communication and teaching, all the things you love to do when you stand up in front of a group of people who are excited to be there, and still maintain health and resilience for yourself. Like, how does that happen? And finding that balance for myself took a long time, because it was showing up. That burnout was showing up as a lot of physical dysfunctions that I did not like. And it didn't make any sense to me because I was doing everything right. Here I am in fitness. This is what they tell other people to go do to get healthy. And I was not feeling healthy. And I think that that is not an unusual story for fitness instructors. I know for a fact, speaking with my colleagues, that burnout is a big deal for us because we are givers. You know, you're going to give, and we want to be there for other people. It's really hard to set those boundaries in the beginning unless someone helps you and guides you through that, you know, from day one. And part of that process is really cultivating your certifications, where you're balancing what it is that you're teaching. So it's not always the high intensity stuff all the time, like always the balls to the wall, hardest thing you could do. That was where I was. I thought that's what everybody wanted, and it was super popular to do that. But what I didn't know, what I was very weak in, was how to back off. And sometimes that is really the more advanced thing to do, to be able to know how and when to back off whatever it is you're doing, whether that is yoga, whether it's martial arts based classes, whether it's simple personal training, or coaching, nutrition coaching. Like, that is a very mentally demanding position where you're right in there present with your client. And so you need to have some things in there, those opposites, somehow in your life. And that could be something completely different, like really completely different. And for me, one of the things that I did to find that balance was, because I like to learn new things, I went and got some voice lessons. I don't sing, Eric. Like, I'm not a singer. Like, I'm not a singer, but I'm like, I got to do something totally different, weird, and off the wall, different from what I do every day. I'm going to go learn to sing show tunes. And so that's what I did. And it was like a half hour of bliss for me every week. And it just reset my nervous system for the rest of the week. And you can show up fully rested, not just rested from sleep, but really rested from just everyday stuff.
Yeah, that's really great advice. I'm actually internalizing that right now because I'm thinking about my own life and how I am sort of 7 days a week doing very similar things, and maybe there needs to be something where I do to reset. So really appreciate that tidbit of advice on that. I'm definitely going to use it. Uh, could you kind of talk us through a little bit of like, how did you start in fitness? Like, did you first get a certification, or was it through your taekwondo classes you just started to do a little bit there and then become certified, or did you never get certified? Like, what was that process like?
Yeah. So it's different for everyone. Everyone you talk to comes to this a little bit differently. But my experience was, like I said, my taekwondo studio wanted a cardio kickboxing instructor, and I was a yellow belt at the time. So the belt system, that was like, I had been at that school for maybe 4 months. Like, that's as much experience as I had there. But they sent me to literally a 4-hour workshop on how to do a kickboxing class. I had done aerobic. I had participated in aerobics classes before, so I had an idea of how that would work. So that was like the first thing. And what they wanted me to do is teach a 1-hour class once a week. And there was another instructor, an experienced instructor, that was going to mentor me and teach me how to teach. I was so happy that she was going to be with me in the room learning how to teach this, because I know what to teach. I didn't know how to do it. Well, the first day I showed up, and she didn't. So we had a classroom full of people waiting to be taught. And so I was just like, okay, here we go. Here we go. I don't know how to count. I didn't know an 8 count from a 20 count. I was just like, what am I going to do? We're just going to fumble through this and figure it out. So it was my trial by fire. And what I was so, it was like, this is the moment, like you choose, you either quit or you lean in. And I leaned in and I decided I needed way more information. And so I got my, I chose to get a personal trainer certification, not group fitness, because I wanted the harder thing. I wanted the thing that gave me the most information to be able to share, the most background. So I went for that personal trainer certification, and I never really did a lot of personal training, but it was such a deep background and understanding of the body and kinesiology. It was really, for me, it worked. But you don't have to do that. You can just do like a group fitness certification. There are many really good accredited certifications out there for people. And that was my first certification. I have collected many since then, which is why I call myself a resilience coach, because the list is long. Those certifications, health coach, also group fitness, RYT, trauma release provider, and nutrition specialist. And so there's some other little ones along the way. But what I tried to do was really cultivate those certifications to meet the needs that I was seeing in my classes. So, when all of your students are asking you questions about nutrition and you have not really any background in nutrition, or have no intention of becoming a registered dietitian and still want to share some information, maybe that nutrition specialist is the way to go. Maybe something about behavior change or stress related resilience things. There's so much out there, and it's not that you have to be certified. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but most states, I don't think there's any state, nobody legally is required to be certified to teach anything in a gym. You're not required to have a certification, although most gyms and facilities that hire fitness professionals, they want you to have one. So they look for that. But not everybody. And some of them will say, well, if you're not certified, but you want to do this, we will send you to go get certified, which is a wonderful thing. So, we need to keep that in mind also. And so, yeah, I mean, you can kind of, curate all of your certifications to give yourself a very unique career, a very niche career where, you love working with seniors. And so you choose certifications that are designed and specific to that population, and you become the go-to authority on health as you age. And that is a great population, right? We're all going there. We're all going that direction. So that's a big one. Or, prenatal care, or menopause, or athletes, specific athletes, specific sports, all of those things. It's wide open. And for as many different people who are out there in the world, there is a niche in the fitness industry for you.
What what's the day to day like with all those certifications that you have? How what what do you what I guess it's probably not even a day to day. It's probably like what do you do in a week, right? Maybe
Yeah.
Mondays you do certain things, Tuesdays you do another thing. What does that look like?
Yeah. Yeah. So for my particular point in time right now with my own online business, um, I I'll just start with like what a week looks like. So I block off Monday, and Monday is kind of back office work, you know, for the business, including writing emails to my list of people. And so I'll write those emails. I usually do a little bit of work. Um, I call it Money Monday, where I kind of look at the money coming in and going out for the business, just to keep my finger on it. I find that, and other people may have said this too, what you focus on grows, right? So you better pay attention to that money. Um, and then I usually use Monday as well for a little bit of creative, because I do have a podcast. And so I try to use that time during the day to either write or, or schedule interviews, and keep that organized. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday are my teaching days. I do a lot of teaching, and thankfully now a lot of teaching in real life. So it's kind of I do have a hybrid thing going on right now. So I do some corporate fitness that I'm contracted to do some corporate fitness classes, and then I have some IRL yoga classes in the community, and some online yoga classes. That's like in the middle, the meat of my week. I usually block some time during the week to do some training for myself. I'm working on 300 hours in my yoga teacher training right now, and also some courses on the business side for marketing for myself. And then I've blocked off Friday for wonderful activities like this, Eric, like this conversation, and sprinkle that all that gets sprinkled with real life stuff that comes up, because as my own business, um, I am the author of that. So if something comes up with my family, or if we want to take a break and go somewhere, I can totally do that. I really wanted that flexibility so that I could be present with my family and do what I love. And isn't that the holy grail of work, you know?
Mhm. Yeah, no, I really appreciated how you broke it down, and it's almost establishing boundaries for what each day is specific for. And I think you're the first person to do that. So I think it's really valuable for people to know, hey, there's a way to break down your week so that it's not, I do everything every day. There's dedicated periods of time in which you do different things. Um, you mentioned the corporate the classes that you provide and also the yoga. Are they how did you go about, I guess, acquiring these clients? Do you still continuing to do any sales, because as we listen to the 5 days, is there any additional sales, or now is
Mm.
it's more just inbound referrals and you're just
Yeah.
dealing with that?
So, yeah, great question. Um, so again, this is my business is a little hybrid. So I've been contracted to teach those corporate classes, and as far as the sales goes through my online studio, I offer one-on-one and group courses and retreats. And so I try to what I've been trying to do lately is break out the year, kind of a quarterly thing, and where I'll do a large event quarterly, like a retreat, or something like that, something bigger, for either general population or fitness professionals, um, like a 2-day retreat, 1-day workshops, things like that. And then on that sales side, what I started out doing is not what I'm doing right now. So what I started out doing is, creating online courses with the idea that maybe that would be a way to kind of find some ease in the effort of that online business, where you sell a course, you're constantly selling this course. But what I found was that I missed the human interaction. And for me, that really is key. And so just setting up like an online course where people can do it whenever they want to do it, that I've taken courses like that. They're fine. They're absolutely fine, I think. But for me, for what I wanted to present from my company, I want to be with people. And I find that energy to be much better. And we all get a lot more out of that. And even in podcast interviews, right? So I much prefer to see you when I'm talking than to just be on a phone call. It's actually really difficult for me personally to have a conversation on the phone because I can't see anybody. that is something I need to work on, apparently. Maybe that'll be next year's thing.
I have that same problem. If I can't see facial expressions, it's so difficult for me to figure out, where am I going? Is this a
Right.
good conversation? Am I asking the right questions? So I
Absolutely.
completely agree with you on that. Yeah, and I think that you're right. There's a value to the physical gathering too, especially if it's like a group working
Mm-hmm.
out. This shared suffering thing, at least I've learned in the military, it's a very powerful tool that you build a tribe and build a community. So
Mm.
do you use any of that aspect of the community, like of your students, of your classes? Is there any aspect of that you sort of focused on? Hey, we're not just a singular class,
Mm.
it's a communal support structure, and
Right.
we can learn from each other.
Right. And there can be that. I will tell you that there are a lot of online studios who are very successful at cultivating this online community, and I'm a member of some of them. Maybe you are too, like the mastermind kind of things where you have access via Mighty Networks, or all kinds of different community opportunities. And they can be really, really great. In my work with resilience, community is really, really important. It's that community connection is one of the first things that people lose when they are very stressed, when that chronic stress gets pushed into stress injury and depression and anxiety. And what that causes, how that shows up, is that people withdraw from community. It's like the first thing you lose. And the last thing that folks who are in that position feel capable of doing is connecting online. They want real connection, they want face to face, they want to feel that energy. And human beings are wired for that. We are wired to be in community with one another. Without it, that sense of isolation is so detrimental on every level, on the physical level, on the mental level, spiritual level, emotional level. We lose so much. And I think we are seeing that. We are seeing the fallout from that, from our isolation in the shutdown, in the pandemic, right? That's part of the piece of this mental health epidemic that we are seeing, is we've lost so much of that. I know for myself personally, when all the masks came off, I was a little bit like, oh, I don't know. Now people can see my expression, right? Now I have to be careful.
Yeah.
And you lost that. Like, how do I communicate in real life with people? And I think that's something that's so valuable. And even if you are online, like I have a class that's online for yoga. When we switched to online, I made sure that, I used to be one of those instructors. It's like, okay, class starts at 6 p.m. We finish at 7 p.m. I'm going to respect your time. We start right away. Boom. And in real life, we did that. When the pandemic hit and we went online, now I'm like, no, we're going to take at least 5 minutes at the beginning to talk to each other. And we're going to take 5 minutes at the end and we're going to talk to each other so that we can get that rapport and keep it. We want to keep it for these people. It's just as important. It's probably more important than the physical movement that we've just been doing, as far as resilience and the nervous system. And I feel very, very strongly about that.
Yeah, that's a really great technique. I never even thought about that for the digital classes to actually implement that conversation. How do you actually do that? Like, do you just open up everyone? Let's have a conversation on basically like a Zoom type of
Yeah.
environment?
Yeah. So in a Zoom environment, yeah. So um, now some people might need to keep their classes a little smaller to do this effectively, um, but I ask people what they're looking for out of the class. And that's a wide open question, right? But even if they don't answer, it's something for them to think about. Like, they don't have to answer. Some people will share, physical things that are going on with them, like, oh, this muscle's tight or whatever. Some people will be like, oh, I really want to work on this pose or this thing. And when it's depending on the format, of course, when it's a yoga class, you can structure your class on the fly and and build a unique, customized class in the moment for that group of people. Give them exactly what they're looking for right there. Other formats, that's a little bit more challenging, but you can still have that conversation with your people. And it may be as simple as, hey, what kind of music do you guys like to hear for this particular class? We can do country today or rock and roll today or whatever it is. Or what you're doing is giving them an opportunity to exercise some agency over what they're doing. And some of these things, it takes time to build that sort of relationship where people feel comfortable. I think there's a lot in fitness where a lot of times people show up to a class, whether it's online or in person, and they are conditioned to just do whatever the instructor says. Like,
Yeah.
she tells me to do it. Like, I was raised, the teacher knows best, teacher, she's going to tell me what to do. And that's part of what they like about those things, right? They don't want to think about what it is, how to work out, what they're going to do. They just want somebody to tell them what to do, which is fine. But I think for fitness professionals, one of the most important parts of our job is to understand that we are there to help people reconnect with their body in a more complete way, to help them understand and feel what's going on in their body with a deeper awareness. And that takes a skill, a communication skill, where you are directing their awareness to what's going on with them, not what's going on in the room around them, but in them, and giving them the choice to change whatever it is they need to change to make it work for them. And it takes some time to learn, and it does take some relationship building. So even if that means just having a little chat or sharing a joke or whatever it is at the beginning or the end of class, I think it's well worth it. And your people will love you for it, for sure.
Mm. Yeah, that's such great advice on building community and why to help the human connection aspect of it. So if someone was starting today, like either a student who's interested in becoming a fitness coach of some sort, or someone looking to come into this industry, what would you say is the best way to build up that initial I guess I don't even know. Community is probably difficult. How do you find your first student? I guess, or first,
Find
right?
your first
I
student.
think
Yes.
because now that you have this established, we understand a lot about, okay, how do we build the community off of what you have? But what about that initial tactical component? Like, how
Right.
do I convince the first person?
Right. So that's a great question. A lot of times people will go through, they'll get their certification and then they're like, well, now what? Now I'm certified and now how am I supposed to do this? It's like you're starting absolutely from scratch, right? So um, there's a lot of different ways to do it, but I would say number one, to start with some humility and give yourself some time first before you even approach any gym or facility to teach there. Really think about what it is, how you want your life to look with this career. Okay. Because if we don't start with some boundaries, we can easily get run over by saying yes to too many things. All right. And once you have an idea of how you want this life in the fitness industry to serve you, I always suggest to people to start by offering your services as a sub, right? Especially if you are coming from a place of zero experience teaching, right? So you can walk yourself in to a gym and just cold call, offer your services, or you can join the a studio or gym or wherever, if it's an open kind of a place, go and take some classes and see if you might want to teach there. That's the other piece, right? So it can look from the outside like, oh, this would be a great place to work, but maybe it's not. And you will know that by taking some of those classes or just being in that environment. Offering to sub is huge. I know that is like one of my biggest pet peeves before I opened my own business, was working as a regular instructor somewhere and never being able to take a day off because there was no sub available. And God forbid we cancel a class, even though it's no big deal, right? Like, who cares?
Mm-hmm.
So offering to sub first. And once you people will take you up on it for sure. And from there, you start to build kind of a portfolio. And you had a guest on recently, Eric, that was talking about this fractional work
Yeah, odds.
portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I thought that was a fantastic interview. But this fractional portfolio, that's basically what fitness instructors do. Because when we first start out, it's very unusual to just work at one gym. Like, you're not going to be the only instructor. You're
Mm-hmm.
going to have your thing that you teach, and then other instructors have their things that they teach.
Yeah.
And so you can't just sit in one gym or one facility or one studio and teach your thing over and over and over again. You're going to go lots of different places, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and and so in the beginning, that can be a little bit fractured, right? That's a
Yeah.
fractional portfolio. But when you're subbing, you get to meet lots of different people. You get to test your skills, you get to hone your skills, and then as you go, basically it's those students that are going to hire you. It's not the studio or the facility. They can be your best advocates. Like, oh, Eric was an amazing instructor. I would love to take a class of his. And then that manager is going to call you and be like, we have this class opening up. Would you like to step in on a regular basis? The second part of that is to keep in mind that it's really hard to make a career out of single classes just all over the place. And this is where you see a lot of turnover in this industry, because people got tired of that, because we don't really want it to be a hobby. Some people do. It's a great hobby job. But if you want a career, we need to expand it. And one of the ways that you can do that is to offer workshops specific to you and to your favorite clients, the ones you love the most, whoever that might be. And you can make a really decent living that way. And there's a lot of great coaches out there that have set great boundaries and are able to make plenty of money and pay all the bills simply with workshops. They use the individual classes kind of like a loss leader, and they get a lot of interest, and then they do a monthly workshop, or every other week, or once a year, a big one, and there's so many different ways to do it. It's one of the pieces that I love about this is that it lets you be super creative. Like, there's just so many options, and they're all valid. Like, there's not a single wrong one. And I would just encourage people to just, open, think outside the box a little bit, because there's a lot of things that can work.
Yeah. Is it challenging to go and get that gym or facility to hire you the first time around? If you just received a new certification, is there just so much turnover that it's fairly easy to get hired, or is there a way that you have to differentiate yourself?
It's always a good idea to differentiate yourself. And you can do that through your certifications. You can also do it through your personality, right? And the fitness industry is an industry of relationships. And we've kind of touched on that already before. It's easier if you build a relationship with that gym or facility before you are asking them to hire you, right? So if you've already, let's say one of my teachers talks about that she moves quite a bit, and every time she goes to a new city, she will take every yoga studio's new student special. Right? So most gyms or facilities will have a new student special, right? So a month for a discounted price, or first week free, or whatever it is. You can do those new student specials. You get in the door, you try all of the instructors, you meet all the instructors, and those instructors are the ones you need a relationship with. Because if they are wanting to take a day off or sick all of a sudden, they know you, they've seen you, they feel better about asking you because they've seen what you can do in their classes, and so on. So it's a little bit hard to answer the question, is it easy or hard to get hired? It really depends on the person and the place where you are, right? I mean, for somebody who's living in a very tiny town, and there's one gym, maybe that's easier, but maybe it's more difficult because everybody knows everyone, right? So, or in a big city, there's challenges there as well, and everywhere in between. But I would say, as far as subbing to get into the door, everyone always needs subs. So usually places have a list of subs. They don't just have one person on call, because that person most of the time can't do it last minute. Like, you want to have 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 people to be able to call to help you, right? And I think good managers in fitness facilities in the fitness industry really cultivate a culture that makes that easier, right? We want to bring in new talent. We want to bring in new energy. And as with all things, it's much better to have that abundance kind of a mindset um, around work and bringing people in to help you.
Yeah, it's so interesting that ultimately all of the conversations I've had, a lot of the jobs, it's always about this human connection, and it's
Mhm.
your entry point, and also the continuity of the actual job itself is ultimately about people and the communities.
Mhm.
Um, so I've taken up a lot of your time already. Is there any uh, parting advice that you might have for anyone who's looking to explore different careers, or maybe even just specifically for fitness? Do you have any thoughts on either of those two topics? And feel free to just you can you can answer both if you'd like. It's up to you.
I think the fitness industry, like all industries, has, it, it's good and bad things going on in it. But I think ultimately, as an industry, it is only as good as its people are. And I think that for instructors, for trainers, for coaches, really in any field, I think it's so, so important that we really spend time knowing who we are first. And through that connection, through that internal connection, that is how we can connect better with our clients and students. I mean, ultimately, we're there to benefit them in their health, but we need to take care of ourselves first. And that means holding space for ourselves with healthy boundaries, both personally and professionally, because you can't really help anybody if you're burnt out and unable to help yourself. So as far as careers go, fitness industry is one of the most flexible industries that you can get into. You can make it absolutely anything that you want it to be, and probably more than what anyone has ever seen before. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to get involved in that fitness industry, in the fitness industry today in the United States. Everything from just a couple of hours a week to full-time studio owner and brick and mortar, or even the big time corporate fitness places, and class design like Les Mills and and places like that. And so there's so many things to do with that. I would just encourage people to maybe dip your toe in and see what you like. If you're a person that loves to move, if you're a person that likes to be in the gym, or maybe you're looking for a healthier shift, maybe that is not your thing right now, but maybe you just need to get out of the cubicle. It's a nice way to balance. We touched on how to balance life earlier, right? With opposites. If you are someone who sits all day, maybe teaching a class of movement might be a great opportunity for you.
Yeah, thanks so much for that last imparting advice. Where can our audience find you if they have any questions about fitness or even the resources that you have?
Mm. Yeah, the easiest way to get in touch with me is through my website. That's savagegracecoaching.com. And you will see a free guide to holding space for trauma informed classes right up on the banner on that website. Plus, there's all kinds of free resources if you're someone who is looking for a little bit more resilience and lowering your stress exposure for the new year. So I hope you guys check it out. You can also find links to my podcast, which is The Work In, at savagegracecoaching.com.
Great. Yeah. And we'll make sure to add all that in the descriptions of where we post this podcast. So from Apple Podcasts to even our website, we'll list it there. Uh,
Beautiful.
yeah, well, thank you so much, Ericka, for joining us at the Life of a Career podcast today. Really appreciate all the advice that you provided.
Thank you, Eric. I really enjoyed it.
Hey, thanks for joining us at Mentor Access. If you like what you just watched, please click like and subscribe, and also hit that bell so that you get notified when we have new videos come out. Thank you for supporting our mission.